Tampa approach, good morning. Icon 584 Bravo Alpha is 9 miles north of Clearwater Air Park.
4 Bravo Alpha, taking runway 04 for departure to the southeast, low altitude, Kilo 9.
So what does it take to be an Icon authorized flight instructor outside of just insurance minimums?
Yeah, we screen everybody that comes in through the course. We don't just take people off the street. So we're looking for experiences with seaplanes more than just the minimums, obviously is desirable, but the minimums are the minimums. So and they are quite high, but we take that. We look at seaplane experience, we look at number of hours given dual, so what kind of teaching have they done, recency of flight, weight, so how compatible they are with customers and fuel consumption. We take the information in, we look at the whole package of the instructor, we talk to them over the phone or in person at the IFC, and then we come up with a mutual plan, a mutually beneficial plan to get them qualified to instruct. Everybody who is an IAFI for us, is an Icon authorized flight instructor for us around the country, has gone through a course that's identical to the company pilot. Company pilots are required to do an annual standardization flight with our safety and chief pilot, and IAFI are encouraged to do an annual standardization flight. So we go out and seek those opportunities with them.
Military and standardization flights are taken very, very seriously. Do you see that crossover at Icon?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a lot of where we came from. For us, it's very tangible and obvious. If you don't have your annual flight standardization check with one of the senior pilots, the chief pilot, the safety pilot, myself, then you're not qualified to fly anymore. And that is from the military. If you go the year without your check ride, you start to lose your qualifications for different missions. You have to prove that you've maintained that level of knowledge and proficiency and communication of the subject matter in order to earn the right to go out and fly those missions. And we treat that the same way. It is a focused mission to hit items that maybe they're non-current on or haven't spoken to in a while because they haven't taught in the plane in 3 or 4 months. It's a much more jovial and camaraderie type ride than it is an actual check ride like the military would look at it.
Alright, throttle set. There's 50. Positive rate, the gear's coming up.
Good. All three, always gear up, flaps up, water rudder up. That's good. Thing that we're trying to get students to emphasize is getting that gear up on the positive climb and not waiting for the end of the runway anymore. White line, positive climb, tap the brakes, gear comes up. Gear's confirmed up, flaps up, water rudder's up. All three every time we run the checklist. Very good. All right, so as we're navigating around, we're getting ready for slow flight. We want to keep in mind that AOA, which is going to be introducing a new feature to a lot of your customers. It'll be the first time they've seen it. So when we start slowing down, normally in slow flight, you're looking for an airspeed to aim for. We know the airspeed as instructors in the back of our head, 5 knots above our stall speed for flap setting, whether it's up or dirty with the flaps down. That'll correspond to mid-yellow, and that's really what we want to focus on is the mid-yellow range of the AOA. So as we approach the yellow line, we can start to push that power up. 4,000 is a good initial target. Almost in the mid-yellow, there it is. Now we want to catch that at about 4,000 RPM. You can see 50 knots, approaching 50 knots, approaching mid-yellow, all corresponding really nicely. So this is the attitude we want to teach. So as an instructor, it's the first time you've seen it, take a look outside, take a picture of where the horizon crosses the canopy so that you can refer to that without necessarily staring at the AOA the whole time. And then of course we want our owners, your students in the future to be stabilized at this altitude.
So for this, with power off, you just hold altitude. I'm working my way back to 1,000 feet,
okay.
And then I'll pull back. And we'll pull the nose up, see it mid-yellow. First we hear a horn, first indication. Then we'll have a buffet as it buffets. Pull power, pitching back to the horizon. Make sure the nose is straight with the rudder. Back at altitude, we can verify our speed and reduce the power to normal cruise.
Good, nice recovery. What I like there is you didn't dump the nose over. A lot of our instructors that come in from other airplanes are used to having to get that nose down to gain the energy back. With this engine and this lightweight plane, it pretty much leaps right to the recovery. So I like that you didn't dump that over. That's something we have to correct a lot as instructors, and be ready to tell your owners that too, and show them, demonstrate that the plane will fly out of the stall very easily. Good.
When a customer gets into the aircraft, they're going to have an instructor training them from the right seat. But before an instructor, an Icon flight instructor, can get in the right seat, they start in the left seat.
Yeah, that's a good point. Traditionally, we think of the PIC sitting left seat. It's where the instrument cluster is. That's where most of the control, the ignition and the master power switch are. So we train people to own and fly the plane from the left seats, hence the instructor needs to sit in the right. But before the person can instruct from the right, we feel they have to have an appreciation of the viewpoint from being in the left. And it's not that we doubt their ability to control the airplane, but it's the ability to teach that experience. So we take a very military mindset in that respect. In the military, you start in one seat, you work towards a progression to the other seat, then you work towards a progression towards instructor where you can sit in both seats, and we kind of take that philosophy. So we're going to teach them at the beginning of the course to sit in the left seat and learn the maneuvers as a pilot first. And that does a couple things. It gives them the perspective that they can then talk about, but also it gives them a chance to find their own nuances and things that maybe they have trouble converting to the A5 with, so that when they do sit in the right seat, they can talk to those points as well. So once someone is complete in the left seat, we move into the right seat, and then we work on a progression of instructor techniques specific to the A5, what to look for, how to guard the controls, and that kind of thing. How can the AOA help me in energy management if I get into a crisis? So that's the point of this, get you out of a bad situation. It's called the box canyon turn, but honestly it should be called a reversal mid-radius, get out of a bad situation turn. And it's designed to go 180 degrees. There's four main components to this. Each one has its importance. The first component is full power. I can't max perform the plane without being at full power. If I'm not at full power, I'm not going to get full energy through the turn. The second one is getting the nose up to a little bit above the horizon. Why? I want to keep that lift vector vertical, right? I want to keep it going above the horizon. As soon as I let that lift vector go off at an angle, we're going to drop the nose and we're going to start spiraling down. The next one is the rolling into bank. That's really important because if you have too little bank, you're going to skyrocket. If you have too much bank, you're going to go back into that spiral. So I'll show you how we control that. And then the last one is the pull. The pull is important because that's what differentiates this from a steep turn. Otherwise, all we're doing is rolling into 45 degrees of bank and letting the plane cruise through the horizon. We don't really want to do that. All right, our airspace is good. I'm looking left and right. So the first step, something bad is in our way, we're going to go full power. Simple enough. You hear the engine rev up, you can see your RPMs jump. Pretty no-brainer there, all the way to the wall. Next thing, nose up. Again, that lift vector, I need to get it above the horizon. Rolling in, it's not only important to start the roll, but where you stop it. Notice I go stick center, and then I execute the fourth part, which is the pull. And I'm pulling right to the horn. I call this playing the horn. Reason being, I can look out the window, and if I pull that horn, I know I've got too much or too little. And I can just adjust whether that horn is on or off. So why is each step important? Well, I'll show you what happens if we don't do it. So we're here cruising along, sightseeing at 4,000 RPM, pretty typical. I forget to add full power. Something happens in front of us, I go ahead and pull the nose up, I roll in, and I start my pull, and we pretty much go into an accelerated stall right away. No energy. Next step, I remember full power, but I forget to pull my nose up like we talked about. So I roll into that steep bank, and I start to pull, and where's our nose go? Right down below the horizon, now we're spiraling. Also not good. So I remember the full power, I remember to get my nose up, but I screw up my turn. So I only bank too little, I pull, our nose skyrockets to the sky, we're eventually going to stall, you're not going to get effectively headed away from the problem. I roll too much bank, like I talked about, lift vector goes away, nose starts to spiral down, not going to fix your problem. And then the last one, the pull. I go full power, I raise the nose, I accurately bank, but I don't pull. This is that steep turn I was talking about. We're not rapidly turning across the horizon, getting out of a bad situation. I gotta add that pull to the mid-yellow, right to the horn, to drag my nose across the horizon. That's each component individually.
That's great to break it down. To break it down on those four components is excellent. That's it gives the person time to think about what you're saying, then everything happening at once.
How do you approach the variation between procedures and technique, knowing that the goal is to accomplish the procedure, but a pilot might go about it with a different technique?
So here's a good example. There is a procedure for landing the A5. It's written in the POH, it's written in our course books. It generally talks about how you are configured on final. If you are coming in for a landing, we should be landing gear down, flying the white line on final, white line on the AOA gauge. On water, it's landing gear up, white line on the AOA gauge. It does not direct you how to get from the downwind to final. That is technique. So we teach what works for us after 6 years of flying. Myself, our chief pilot, our head instructor, all have years of experience. So we teach what works for us and what's easy to convey to the owner. But we allow for people from other airplanes to bring in, if you want to use the gump check versus our normal 7 check across our gear flaps and water rudder. that's fine. Use the gump check as long as you're accomplishing the procedure, which is to be in the right configuration. So standardization is a goal, right?
Yeah.
It's rarely achieved to have perfect standardization, especially across the broad spectrum of instructors that we have with the wide variety of experiences they have. Again, I'll go back to these instructors that we bring in, they all have vast experience in other airplanes, some with retractable gear, some not. So I don't have to teach them the hazards of landing with the gear in the wrong position. They understand that. What you're talking about is habit patterns, and most of them, especially the seaplane IAFE that we have, they have that ingrained in them in some way, shape, or form. So I'm not going to make them conform to the way we check the gear. What we talk about is the importance of checking the gear. We allow for other techniques to come in with, like you said, the ultimate goal being the procedure, which is out of the POH in our course books.
So how do you teach, but going back to the low-level flying, because that's such a core element of Icon's mission and just adventure flying, how have you taught trainers to teach that?
The good news is, because we have IAFE that are seaplane qualified, it's not a new environment to them. The Icon A5 may be more maneuverable than they're used to, so we do talk about using that AOA gauge for energy management and watching our bank angles. We have the low altitude guidelines, which are published and available to the general public, but we also emphasize that in one of the ground courses. We talk about low altitude instruction and flying. So we talk about maintaining energy states, we talk about awareness, we talk about time to impact, which is a military concept brought over. To answer your question in short, it's part of our curriculum. We have an entire ground lesson dedicated to low altitude flying, and it's not that they're incapable of doing it. Like I said, most of them have done it. It's just the idea of how does the A5 react in that environment, and how can you be a better instructor using the tools like the AOA that the A5 has in order to be a better instructor for our owners. Peter 9, Icon 4 Bravo Alpha, right downwind, runway 4, Peter 9. And here is one thing that we'll teach that's a little different. The Icon displacement from the runway on the downwind. Plane is really maneuverable and slow, and it has a tight turn radius, so it's okay in this plane. It's actually more comfortable to be a little bit tighter alignment displacement from the runway when you're on your downwind. So some instructors, they don't like the close feel of it, but once they do a couple patterns and they see the engine out demonstration, they like it a lot better. So once we're on downwind, I like to set 4,000. The book recommends 4,500, but I like a good white line 60 knot, which equates to about 4,000 RPM hold altitude. Once I'm anywhere from midfield to the beam, I'll get my gear, start running that checklist. So right about here, good speed, gear is coming down, and I wait for it to confirm. Gear is down and locked, flaps are 0, water rudder retracted. I pull that power back to 3,000, which is our landing power, and that takes a little getting used to for some people. Instead of pulling it to idle over final, we set 3,000 RPM. Now I start that right base turn. On base turn, I'm going to do one more gear check. Gear is down, flaps up, water rudders retracted. Notice I always do all three together because they are the three vital elements to the checklist for either land or landing for us. Once I roll out on final, I probably went a little bit long given the winds today, but the first pattern is always one that you can adjust and learn from. I can see the streaks in the water just prior to the runway here, so I know that we're lined up on the right runway, and now that windsock is coming into view as well, which confirms it. So I haven't really touched the power. As I roll out here, you'll notice we've got a real good aim point. If you see, the AOA is right on that white line. I'm maintaining 3,000 RPM for my power, and our aim point's looking pretty good, but I can feel it start to sink. If I wanted to bring in the landing lights as a cross-check, I can see there's one red, and now we're getting into two. So we are, in fact, sinking. So what I do is just add power for a second. I'm going to level the plane off, drive it in on the white line for just 1 potato, 2 potato, and now reestablish that 3,000 RPM and that white line. Another beautiful thing is the landing attitude is the same for land and water, so you don't have to learn a new one. Here's white line, 3,000, driving it down to the center line, round it out just over the runway, and let it come down nice and gentle.